What's going on? An unprecedented day in playoff baseball. For the first time ever, three wild card game threes will be taking place today. And all three teams have a chance to do, what's never been done before in the wild card series era. And that is come back from losing game one in that series. That tends to be how game threes work. The loser of game one or the winner of game one tends to lose game two in that. Joe Roderick, Brenden Schaeffer with you here on Card Central 365, powered by Gray Bar, and all content brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours here on STL Sports Central. Brenden, I'm going to start off by saying this. The last few days that we've done shows together, we've done shows every single day this week together. We haven't really mentioned a whole lot of the playoff baseball that is taking place. We've kind of stuck to Cardinal-centric topics, and that's where we're still going to go today. But I'm sure that you, much like me, are kind of locked into these games, watching these games, and God, playoff baseball is just it's just God, I love watching it so much.
Yeah, man, it's the best. I love that the series got evened up in several of them yesterday so that we can have a full day again today and going on into the night. I have my as you well know, Joe, I have my Thursday night bowling league that'll happen later this evening, and pretty much all the time I am in favor of putting on the Thursday night football game on the TVs near the lanes, whether it's conflicting with a Blues game. There's a lot of hockey fans and I love the Blues, but I also am like, I got to see my fantasy team. I really would like to. I'll go in the bar to check on the Blues, you know what I mean? But tonight I'm like, man, Red Sox Yankees over a Rams game. I'm thinking, yeah, can we get some baseball on? So I'm excited for sure to see the day of baseball unfold.
It's just, I mean, you get middle of, it's one thing when you get a middle. I mean, we sit here through the bullshit all season of Cardinal 1:00 Wednesday games against the Pirates or whoever else, and it's just like, all right, just get me through this. But then, playoff baseball rolls around and I have my kid asking me if I'll pick him up from school at 2:00 so he can get home and watch Cubs Padres the past 2 days. And the way the way it worked out today is, again, you picking me up early today. I was like, the game starts at 3:08. I was like, I get you from school at 3. I was like, I think today we're not going to do that.
Yeah. It's good stuff, man. I mean, and it's been compelling. You have Andrew Kittredge starting a playoff game. That was kind of fun. Yamamoto last night, mowing through the Reds for a while. I mean, there've been a lot of great performance. Shohei Ohtani, I mean, his 2 home run game is just, this is the kind of stuff we live for. And October's just beginning, so we're lucky in that way.
And so you look at it, I mean, there's been so much made this week of the future of the Cardinals, what Heimblum's going to do, what a Heimblum constructed team is going to look like. And throughout the season, another thing that we kind of mentioned was Sonny Gray. Like, where would he fit into any of the playoff teams? Like, where would he fall into some of these rotations? In some cases, he might be a number 2. In some cases, he might be a 4 or 5, depending on which playoff team you're looking at. But just above and beyond, like, you look at the first round of games and you look at what Skubal went out there and did on Tuesday. You look at what Crochet went out and did on Tuesday in that game. Blake Snell even went past 5 innings in a baseball game the other day. And then you go into yesterday's games and you look at, what the Padres were able to do. Like, you look at these pitching staffs and it's just, I mean, it's a whole lot of dogs that are out there on these staffs. And right now you look at the Cardinals and you're just like, damn, man, like, I would not put Sonny Gray in that category. And it seems like, that it's just the Cardinals just do not have that. And that seems like it is a number 1 that they're going to need to go and find in some way when we start talking playoffs again in St. Louis.
Yeah, like, I think you need a couple of legit ones. And, like, it's hard to measure it, too, based off of the series we're seeing right now because it's best 2 out of 3. And we've seen some managers be a lot more aggressive and going early to the bullpen. Like, pitchers that are still solid arms might only be going 3 or 4 innings because the intent going into the game is to, max out the matchups and be able to just survive and advance to a series that gives you a little bit more room to breathe. In those best of fives and those best of sevens, you really find out, who's got the pitching depth to be able to withstand the length of an October run. But certainly, I mean, if you're talking specifically about Gray, he's been, viewed as the Cardinals' number one, and I think that's been appropriate. Like Liberatore had a solid season. Sonny had a lesser season than what we would expect. He still racked up the 200 strikeouts, but like it's kind of a night and day comparison. You don't have to look very hard to realize why the Cardinals aren't in the position that some of these October teams are still playing this week, and the teams that'll be playing next week that got a bye out of these this round of games. Yeah, it largely does boil down to pitching. There's a lot of different things that you can nitpick and say Cardinals need this. They need to, get more production from their outfield. But it really does boil down to starting pitching. And when we kind of rattle off the expected, projected 1 through 5 for the Cardinals for next year, we're still seeing some of that same stuff. And you're talking about moving on from Sonny Gray. So you're really even a little bit further behind the 8 ball. But that's maybe part of that is exactly why the Cardinals feel the need to kind of enter into more of a rebuild or a step back right now, when you realize there might be some of these type of arms coming through the system. You're hoping to continue to draft more of them. Hopefully a couple of months ago, they drafted 1 or 2 of those types of guys, but you're going to need time for those pitchers to develop into the guys that can headline rotations in an October environment.
Yeah, and that's, you look through it, and it's very unfair to compare any pitcher, I think, in Major League Baseball outside of maybe a Skeens or 1 or 2 others to a Tarek Skubal type pitcher. But you just look at that and it's like, hey, why have the Tigers been so successful these past few years? Like, you look up and down the roster and it's like, okay, they have a lot of top draft picks that are producing in one way or another. But it's like when you have that one guy that is going out there and is going to allow 1 run over 8 innings of a game. And it's like, that's a really, really great place to start and build off of, and know that you have a really good shot at winning a playoff series if that's the case.
Yeah, because if you have a Skubal or, some of the rare air type of arms, and it's a 5 or a 7 game series, you are very much expecting those types of guys more often than not to be lined up to pitch twice. And to know that you can pretty much roll those guys out more often than not and get 7 innings of 1 run or better and maybe a double-digit strikeout total, like that's a huge difference maker. And it's an equalizer for the teams that may not have the roster that goes toe-to-toe. You can go position by position at all the other spots and say, I might favor one side over another. But if that underdog side has a Skubal, they're not an underdog anymore. The ability for one arm, and if you have 2 of those guys, we've talked for years about the Phillies when they've been at their strength with that starting rotation. That's kind of a reason every year you go into October and you think, man, the Phillies are going to be a team that you have to contend with because they've got at least 2 horses at the top. It's an absolute difference maker when you're talking about the way that baseball changes when you get to this month.
And it makes it a lot easier to bet the under out there in Missouri. Get ready, because the Show Me State is getting the DraftKings Sportsbook soon. December 1st is when you can download that and start using that in the state of Missouri. And new customers get the $300 in bonus bets when we launch on December 1st. Download now and place a $5 bet when we go live using the promo code STL Sports. Again, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use code STL Sports, grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when we go live December 1st. That's code STL Sports in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offer. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. And you kind of look at what you mentioned the 5 for next year. I don't even know. I mean, if I don't know if our 5 would match at this moment, who we would have as far as the starting. I mean, McGreevy, Liberatore, Palante, Leahy, and I don't know. I don't want to say Quinn Matthews, but that
4-man rotation.
I would hope that they maybe go out there and sign somebody. That'd be my guess. Somebody off the scrap heap.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's gonna happen. and some of the quotes that have come out from Chaim Bloom, saying, yeah, we got to address maybe starting pitching depth in free agency. I think depth is an important way to look at that because, look, my preference, as I've said a number of times, if you sign a couple of guys off the scrap heap and you do retain Palante for that $3 million, and Alex is chiming in on him right now, I don't think Palante makes it unless he has a great spring training. My preference for the Cardinals, and look, I want to see the Cardinals win as many games as they can, understanding that the long-range plans aren't going to waver. Like everything they do has to still make sure they're not setting themselves back on the path toward the rebuild and really having a strong foundation in the future. But my preference would be to, trade Sonny Gray. Hopefully you don't have to eat a ton of the money there and you can carve out that financial savings into a couple of bargain bin starting pitchers, because when you count McGreevy, you count Liberatore. And I think Liberatore can make it through a season, but like this was a little bit of a weird year for him with some of the ups and downs with the velocity. And so I don't think, if I set the over-under at 29.5 starts for Liberatore next year, might be inclined to take the under on that, just because there's bound to be like a period where you're down for 15 days. And, those things they could happen to any pitcher, but just like projecting forward, Liberatore, like durability was, I guess it was better than it could have been this year because they never had to put him on the IL, but they skipped some starts and they were clearly monitoring that. McGreevy, I think, will be okay. His style of pitching, hopefully, is just one that you can kind of set it and forget it. But then it's like you don't really have a lot of other options. If we're counting Leahy as one of the four at this point, that tells you, you have to go out and get some other guys. So, Alex, to your point, in order to render Palante to the bubble of the rotation to begin the season, you have to sign two guys or sign one and trade for another that can come in and compete for a spot. Otherwise, I think Palante is locked in there. The action that Chaim Bloom and ownership are willing to take on this topic will tell you just how locked in Palante will be. Is Bill DeWitt Jr. okay with a plan that you go into spring training potentially paying Palante about $3 million and not projecting that money to be spent on a guy that's in your rotation? Like if you sign two others and you are looking to go to Leahy, is that something they're willing to do, to bake in the idea that you might be paying somebody not to do a job, but in so doing, you're ensuring that you don't have to rush a Quinn Matthews or a Liam Doyle or anybody from AA that's going to make the rise to AAA next year? That would be my preference for the Cardinals, because I think it's the way that you can keep enough fan base buy-in to kind of have a respectable product on the field while doing all the very important rebuilding activities behind the scenes that are going to be necessary.
Yeah, and as far as the McGreevy goes with that, like I look at it, I love watching him pitch. I have been very open about that. But when if it's 6 innings, 3 runs, you kind of look at some of these other postseason games and you realize that's probably a loss right there.
It's hard. It's hard to score 4 runs against some of these pitchers, man. It is.
It is. And when you're going, I mean, you look, and again, but as you mentioned, he's young. He is still yet to have a full, 162 games in a major league dugout for an entire season. Maybe that comes with it. Maybe that comes with knowing that next year he's going into spring training with one of those 5 spots in the rotation. Maybe we do see a lot of growth from him with that. But you're also looking too in these. Dylan Cease yesterday was dealing 3 hits, no runs in the 4th inning, and I don't know how much analytics played into it, or if it was just Mike Schilt having a feeling that hey, I have the best bullpen in baseball. I'm going to it. And I am of the belief that when you get to playoff baseball, when you get to meaningful baseball, it's a race to 27 outs. And, we're not out there trying to hit numbers, get wins, hit 6 innings, 7 innings. Hey, I'll put together whatever formula I need for 27 outs. And I think it was Tony La Russa that kind of invented that in the postseason. And you're kind of seeing some descendants of him in a Mike Schilt that's kind of going along and being like, all right, yep, this is how we're going to play. And Craig Counsell, I think, tried that yesterday with Kittredge, and it's funny to look at it and see Kittredge gets the loss as the opener yesterday, right, with only allowing that 1 run. But I mean, he went in there and gave up the 1 run. Counsell tried something. It didn't work. Kittredge needed to allow 0 runs, not 1.
Yeah, but you're facing the toughest part of the opposing lineup, and that's why you bring in a guy that you think can most effectively combat that. But they're the top hitters in a lineup that made the postseason for a reason. So it's not always like it's not easy. The other team's a playoff caliber lineup and a playoff caliber club as well. And you mentioned like it's starting with La Russa and, Mike Schild having a willingness to do that. People are going to yell at me, but Ollie Marmol did it in 2022, and it actually worked to a T. If Ryan Helsley hadn't fallen down and hurt his finger in Pittsburgh on the previous Tuesday or whatever the hell it was,
Right.
that plan with Jose Quintana worked. I mean, yeah. I was in Ollie Marmol's office that day, and we're all kind of picking at the questions of like, how long are you going to let him go? And it was very clear, like there was a batter in that Phillies lineup. I'd have to go back and look if it was, to the Bryce Harper spot or if it was the Schwarber, whatever it was, where they're like, once you get past this spot, third time through, the next guy is going to be, Quintana's not facing whoever the tough righty was the third time. And it was just like so clear to everybody. And then it happens and it goes really well. I think he gave up like 1 run in 5 innings or whatever it was. And then you get to the end of the game, and unfortunately, the Ryan Helsley stuff happens. But that is the type of managing we often see in the playoffs. It's just funny to me that ends up getting used as one of Ollie Marmol's worst moments when I considered it a flawlessly managed playoff game up until the point that it all blew up, which is like, obviously you don't get credit for that. But I just always find the disconnect on that to be very fascinating, because that is the way that the playoffs are often managed, with these kind of scripted plans of like these guys have data. They're smart to know that you gotta watch out, Joe, for the landmines in the opposing lineup. And those are things that you can be aware of. Like around the 6th inning, this guy's going to be batting against our beleaguered starting pitcher, and we don't want that matchup. So here's how we're going to approach the game from there. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. And as I'm looking back at it, that day you're talking about, it was a 2-0 game. Helsley came in, got the last out of the 8th inning, and went out there again for the 9th. And we've since learned he can't do that.
Him sitting out that inning, especially like in general, that wasn't a strength of his,
right?
But especially after having the finger issue, when you're sitting there for that bottom of the 8th, and then it gets numb. That's what happened. It got numb. And like in retrospect, and I even argued this after the point. This is 3 years ago, so we're relitigating old history. Yeah. But I even
6 runs in the 9th. 6 runs is what the Phillies scored in that 9th inning.
Yeah, there had to come a point, I think maybe one batter sooner. And I get it. Ollie's point, and he's never wavered on this, was Ryan Helsley got you here, and I'm not going to like lose our season with anybody else. But like the extent to which that finger was bothering him, does it occur in the moment to say, we got to get another conversation, we got to get a real fit? But again, if you're Helsley, was he going to cop to his finger bothering him? No, he was going to say, yeah, my finger feels great. I'm going to locate. And so like it all kind of unraveled very quickly. I would have a batter or two sooner, as he's walking guys, gotten somebody up. But again, his stance, the manager's stance, was we're going down with Ryan Helsley, or we're just not going down any other way. And of course they went down, they lost, and the rest is history.
God, outside of that, again, up until that 9th inning, it was a 2-0 game that year. And then the next day, Phillies won again 2-0. And it's just, it goes into what we're talking about, just how hard it is to score runs in the postseason, unless you're the Dodgers playing the Reds. And I think we all saw it go that way. As soon as when the Reds scored 2 in the first, and then the Dodgers were left runners on 2nd and 3rd in the bottom of the first, I said, all right, you know what? I'm going to watch this game for a little bit. I'm going to see how this goes. The second the Dodgers took the lead, I turned the TV off and I went to bed, because I knew that it was done. It wasn't coming back from that. So, yeah.
I want to touch on this comment from Enough is Enough. He said they can always cut a free agent pitcher on a 1-year deal loose, or trade it if somebody in AAA develops. That is exactly what I agree with. Now, the only question is going to be, does ownership buy into that? Because for us out here, we can very easily say, strategically, get some pillow contracts, get some 1-year deals on some reclamation projects, bargain bin stuff. Get enough of them that you can have some competition in spring, where Palante is not gifted a spot. Leahy is not gifted a spot. These guys have to work for the role, and somebody's going to win it and somebody's going to lose it. And whoever loses it, maybe they're off to the bullpen. You can kind of wait and see how, health is preserved for everybody, but you go in with a real fighting chance in your starting rotation. And then you get a Quinn Matthews that's ready, or you get a guy that, you spent $5 million on this contract, but by early June, clearly the guy's not working out. can Chaim Bloom convince ownership to buy into something that historically I think we've always blamed Mozeliak on, but it wasn't always only his decision of when to cut bait on something that's not working, and compel ownership to understand this is the cost of doing business. You might have to pay a few $1,000,000 to somebody to not play for you. But we had to do it this way in order to assure that we had the depth coming into a season where our prospects just aren't quite ready. I think that's one of the smartest comments that's up there on our screen right now that we've ever gotten here on Card Central 365, because it gets to the heart of what I think could make the Cardinals successful if they can find a way as an ownership group and a front office to plot out and plan a willingness to, in a year where they're not trying to raise the payroll, actually be willing to have a sunk cost be sunk when the time comes. Because Eric Fetty is a great example of that not happening in this very year when the Cardinals were actually competitive and had a chance to make the playoffs. And we're not really expecting them to be quite as competitive next year. That is going to be such an interesting line, Joe, of will they be willing to do this type of move if and when it is needed to happen? That's going to be very fascinating to me. I hope that by saving a bunch on Sonny Gray, that kind of softens them up to go, yeah, we're willing to approach it this way.
And that's the point I was going to make, was the money for Sonny Gray. We heard the other day that they are not, they don't have they don't have the financials, a budget in place yet for the season on what they plan on having as far as the payroll for next year. And a lot of that probably has to do with how much they're eating from contracts and how much they're able to trade away. And with all of that, if you trade away Sonny Gray and you're able to trade away his $35 million, then yes, you can go out and you can find a couple other pitchers to fill that role. Like somebody in the comments said, and like we've talked about too, looking at what a lot of these free agent pitchers, what their estimated annual value is going to be going into next season. You're going to look at that and you're going to say, okay, who can we get at the $10 million mark? And I'm going to tell you, when we looked at it and we looked at what the estimated value is, you're not going to be excited with a lot of those possibilities out there.
I just don't really agree with that, though. Like, how many times do we get to March and guys are signing for $5 million? This is the offseason where I think the Cardinals can afford to wait out the market and just pick up the scraps when it's over. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be guys. I know what they project. How many times have we been able to count that the projections of Spot Track or MLB trade rumors, how often do those not actually match what ends up happening? It's a game of musical chairs. When the teams that are desperate to fill holes with quality options do so, and the guys that are getting multi-year contracts, 2 years, $24 million for 12 a pop, and you kind of whittle your way down, there will be guys left at the end. And I think the Cardinals, I'll be okay with it if the Cardinals don't have a bunch of signings by, winter meetings ending, because I think this could be a year where, as long as eventually they're willing to kind of find the bargains, you could afford to wait it out a little bit, because you're not desperate you're not going into it going, we have to have this level of pitcher or we're not going to make the playoffs. Yeah, you're not going to make the playoffs. Like, we're kind of all understanding that that's likely the outcome for 2026.
Looking at guys last year, if you want to use that $5 million mark for that last year, at 525 last year, you had Andrew Haney signed with the Pirates for 525. Kyle Gibson signed for 525. Colin Ray for $5 million. Martin Perez for $5 million. So that's what around that area. That's what you had last year, signing for $5 million. I don't have dates as to which they signed those offers, though.
Yeah, but I mean, like, Jose Quintana was like $4 or $5 million. There was a buyout that they're going to have to pay associated with that. Like, there's guys. I think there are names that will emerge in that price range, and I'm not expecting them all to be great. But I'm looking at shots on goal. You know what I mean? If I've got, $35 million owed to Sonny, and let's say, normally I'm more conservative with these estimates, but let's say the Cardinals get a great deal where they only have to eat 10 of the $35 million and they get a prospect back for Sonny Gray. That's $25 million that they were willing to pay because they signed the damn contract. But now we're saying, okay, of that 25, we're still going to give you a cost savings, but we're going to be willing to spend 15 or 20 on 2 to 3 arms. However, we need to allocate that. If it's, 2 obvious starters and a swingman, if it's a guy to strengthen the bullpen and a couple starters, whatever it needs to be, we're still going to lower payroll from last year. Michaelis is off the books. Fetty is off the books. Guys will get raises. But right now, other than Arenado, Contreras, and Sonny, there's nobody with a contract. Am I wrong? Is there anybody else that has one? It's all ARB guys or pre-ARB.
Yep.
So this is not a big payroll.
Patrick Corbin last year signed March 18th. Jose Quintana signed March 5th. Andrew Haney signed February 22nd. Just kind of going through and looking at some of those names.
Yeah, and I'd like to get guys before that, but like February exists as well. Get guys early in spring and say, hey, man, you want to get to spring training. You want to be able to build value for yourself because you're 32 years old. And if you have a good year, you won't be sitting here still on February 1st this time next year. Well, you might be because there's a lockout, but don't talk about that right now. We're just talking about rebuilding your value and let's get this deal done, man. Let's get it inked. We're going to put a little bit of a buyout here for the player contract option for the following season because you're going to have a great year. We're going to buy out of this and this will get you on your way. I mean, you got to make those types of deals, I think, in early February.
Who all did you mention with an actual contract for next year? Who were the guys you threw out there?
I mean, we know that Sonny Gray is making his $35 million. Yeah. Arenado and Contreras are obviously under contracts. Who else other than guys that is like dead money, guys that aren't still on the team, guys that have
I don't even know if there's dead money anymore. Is there any? I don't know if there is any more dead money.
No, I mean like deferrals is the word I was looking for. Yeah. Deferred money, like
no. Everybody else is arbitration eligible for that. Yeah.
Donovan made a shade under 3. He was an all-star. He'll go to at least probably $5 million, but I expect him to get traded. Frankly, you're John King probably not on the team next year. They're not going to pay John King $2+ million in ARB. JoJo's going to get a raise. JoJo's going to be one of the more high-paid players on the team if he's still here. If they can get a really good prospect for him, I would be very much not surprised if he's dealt. He made a little over $2 million, so he's probably in line for $3.5, $4 million in his final year of ARB eligibility. Palante is going to go from 2.1 to probably 3. Libby is ARB 1. He's going to get a nice little raise. But like this is chump change compared to talking about like a full team payroll. Payroll is going to drop significantly, barring some real spending in free agency, factoring in any savings of Arenado, any savings of a potential Contreras. They could be bottom 10 in payroll without even really trying. You know what I mean? So there's room to do some real maneuvering in the free agent market, in my opinion, while still having a payroll that is drastically lower than it just was. The math, unless I'm missing something, I get it. You got ARB raises for guys. That's not good. Don't use that as the excuse. It will be talked about, and I'm going to say phony, because you're going to have so much savings in other places that it will do more than offset what those arbitration raises are going to be. It just is.
All right, so you got 3 wild card games today. Then MLB takes a day off tomorrow before starting back up with the ALDS, NLDS on Saturday. I do really enjoy the one of the best things about the teams with the buys is how they all handle it, how they go about staying ready for it. And if you missed it yesterday, the Mariners had an inter-squad game. I think that now, like they normally will all do inter-squad games in some capacity. They'll let fans in to watch. But the starting right fielder for one of the inter-squad games for the Seattle Mariners yesterday was Hall of Famer Ichiro Suzuki out there catching fly balls, making plays.
Yeah.
Out there.
He's a lifer, man.
After being inducted into there, looking exactly the same in shape as he did when he played. It's really just fun to see.
He should be the Cardinals leadoff hitter next year. I mean, that's what we're going to be talking about in this rebuild. So yeah, dude, he's a beast.
So it was, I love seeing that. I'm sure there was at some point talks to try to get Griffey a bat. Guessing he might have turned that down, or maybe he was at one of the other 4 games taking pictures for his new career.
He's done that, man. There's a lot of those going around with the Seattle ties as well. I mean, Randy Johnson, Marshawn Lynch. I mean, that's been a popular post-playing career choice for a lot of those athletes who spent time in Seattle.
It is. Hey, he's Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been at Card Central 365, powered by Gray Bar. They are your distributor for electrical and datacom needs, and all content brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings, the crown is yours here on STL Sports Central.